Hello and welcome to my vlog on New Wave Global. It basically summarizes whatever latest article that I write for the Friday Times. And this one is about the exploding pages. Now, last Tuesday at around 3:30 p.m. local time in southern Lebanon, the southern Beirut neighborhood of Dahiya and eastern Bekaa Valley, and these are all Hezbollah strongholds, hundreds of low-tech pages, which is a messaging device, began beeping. The unsuspected users had no idea that their devices were rigged. And of course, there was no time to figure it out. The beep came from a frequency dedicated to activating the explosives in the rigged devices. Nearly 3,000 devices exploded simultaneously. Of course, there's no official word from Israel since that country does not acknowledge covert intelligence operations, covert being the operative word. But information has already began trickling out, and the evidence points to a joint operation by Israel's Mossad, which is their external intelligence agency, and Unit 8200, which is a branch of the military intelligence. Unit 8200 collects signal intelligence, it does code encryption and decryption, and offensive and defensive cyber operations. In other words, it conducts offensive intelligence operations as well as counterintelligence. Now, just after the attack, the United States based news website, Axios, spoke with three unnamed US officials. I mean, this was their report which they put out, in which they said that they'd spoken to three unnamed US officials, and it reported that Israel decided to blow up the pager devices carried by Hezbollah members in Lebanon and Syria on Tuesday out of concern its secret operation might have been discovered by the group. It was a use it or lose it moment, one US official said, describing the reasoning Israel gave the US for the timing of the attack. Now, we know from reports that Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, spoke to the US Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, just minutes before the attack, and he said that they were going to mount an attack but gave no details about the nature and scope of the attack. Now, Axios further reported a former Israeli official with knowledge of the operation said Israeli intelligence services planned to use the booby-trapped pages it managed to plant in Hezbollah's ranks as a surprise opening blow in an all-out war to try to cripple Hezbollah. Now, this indicates that Israel might have got some intel, as I mentioned above, that Hezbollah counterintelligence could discover the ploy and decided to push forward the attack date instead of it being the opening for a larger air-ground offensive against Hezbollah. From the way the attack was mounted and in light of further evidence, it's also clear that Mossad operatives had physical access to these devices. Now, Mossad must have procured these devices, the entire external chain through which those devices were procured. And then, of course, the Unit 8200 operatives, who are the tech gurus, managed to rig them. And so at some point, when they had physical possession of the devices, was the time when these devices were rigged. And so that's where the statement by Su Cheng Kuong, who's the CEO of Gold Apollo, comes in. Now, Gold Apollo is a Taiwanese firm, manufacturing firm. They manufacture pagers and other such devices. And he spoke to the media in the northern Taiwanese city of New Taipei. And Su said that the product was not ours. It was only that it had our brand on it. Well, this is where the story begins to get naughty. Su said that the beepers were made by a Europe-based company, though at that point he did not disclose where in Europe the company was based. One of the Taiwanese newspapers called the Straits Times did report that he said the remittance was very strange and payments had come through the Middle East. Of course, Su did not elaborate further. Now, later reports by news wires and other European publications identified the company as BSE Consulting KFT, based in Hungary. So I went and I did a Google check with BSE Consulting, and it took me first to the website of a German company based in Munich. So I changed the search parameters to add Hungary and KFT, and it gave me bare bones information listing a tax and registration number and an address in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary. And it also gave me the date of establishment, which was 6th of 5th month, 2022. And then 31st December 2023 as the date of its latest financial. And then it said that it has one owner and one manager. And it lists its main activity as 7022 business and other management consultancy activity. Now, obviously, this was sheer malarkey, and this entity was a shell company. That evidence has now come out clearly. This forces us back to the Gold Apollo CEO, Sue. Why would the company allow a shell company to use its brand? It's a very simple question, in the sense that one doesn't have to be a business or financial maven to know what brand protection means and why companies guard it so jealously. A strong and positive brand reputation is a company's most valuable asset. So clearly, the Gold Apollo CEO is feeding everyone nonsense. For instance, at one point he said BSE was their agent and they were in business together for 3 years. That cannot be, since BSE was registered in June 2022. Also, the agent bit doesn't square with Sue's earlier statement that BSE had manufacturing capacity for making pages and Gold Apollo merely allowed it to use its brand. Someone from BSE approaches Sue. Well, we are assuming that. So they approach Sue and say they manufacture Beeples and would like to use the Gold Apollo brand for their Beeples. What due diligence would any company do? What kind of questions Gold Apollo would have for such a request in a series of meetings? How many man hours Gold Apollo lawyers and in-house technical experts would expend to investigate the bona fides of BSE? I mean, these questions are very clear, and there can be any number of other questions. It's a very simple thing. I mean, I cannot just up and go to a company and say, listen, I manufacture a product that you also manufacture, but I want you to give me your brand. I mean, those guys will say, let's say no, that's not going to happen. So Gold Apollo obviously has to answer many questions. It is complicit either directly or indirectly, and any dedicated law enforcement can get to the bottom. That's as far as Gold Apollo is concerned. Now, coming to Hezbollah, the episode clearly creates a host of problems, besides it being humiliating, obviously. While the group has done well to engage Israel in support of Hamas, even if within a restricted battle space, it has taken many losses. Israel's retaliatory policy has been intelligence-based. It picks up Hezbollah positions and the movement of its leaders and cadres and takes them out. Now, Israel uses intelligence-based operations for at least 7 major reasons. One is the fact that such operations are precise, and Israel has honed this capability and invested in it over decades. There's a great book by Ron Bergman, who's an Israeli journalist, which actually does a lot of investigative work with reference to Israel's covert intelligence operations, and it's called Rise and Kill First. And anyone interested in how Israel has honed this capability and how it has invested in this capability needs to read that book. The second reason is that the IBOs, the intelligence-based operations, indicate penetration of the adversary's counterintelligence. And it sows suspicion and forces the adversary to cleanse its ranks, because that's exactly what's going to happen now. Third, IBOs have a psychological effect on the adversary in terms of comms protocols and their integrity, as well as security of movement. How do you communicate? Is the enemy watching your listening in on your conversations, watching your movement? And Israel has already shown the capability to take out targets, so it has a psychological effect on Hezbollah or any adversary for that matter. The fourth reason is that this is the scalpel approach, like the surgical scalpel. It's not like a sledgehammer. And the scalpel approach results in higher payoffs by neutralizing high value targets. The fifth reason is that it signals to the adversary that Israel can reach the intended target within the adversary's lair. Now, Ismail Haniyeh's assassination in an IRGC run guest house in Tehran is a case in point. The sixth reason is the clever wedding of human intelligence to technology, and that demonstrates innovation. Finally, and seventh, it attempts to deter while promising more punishment if the adversary does not heed the signal. So, what does this mean? I mean, what's the corollary here? Hezbollah's work is cut out for it. Last Thursday, when Hassan Nasrallah spoke and addressed his cadres, he himself described the attack as an unprecedented blow, even though he promised that Hezbollah will stay in the fight and will also exact revenge for the pager attack. So Hezbollah will now be feverishly performing forensics on the pagers to determine, and also the walkie-talkies, because the pagers blew up on Tuesday, and the next day, a number of walkie-talkies also blew up, so there were more casualties. So they're going to determine how exactly these devices were rigged and what particular radio frequency was used to activate the explosive. Hezbollah will also be looking into where these pages came from, who within the group were part of this process of acquisition, and whether the source of this import was vetted. This counterintelligence exercise will be hectic and tedious, but clearly it's also crucial. Some reports suggest the pages were procured by Iran. If that is correct, then that would indicate a penetration of Iranian IRGC or its intelligence units. So there are a number of questions that Hezbollah will be looking into for answers. It will also have to take many other decisions, because disruptive attacks like this one forces the victim into reevaluating internal security and protocols. But the most important, I would say, and it's, I think, the vital lesson for axis of resistance, is to develop high-grade capabilities to undertake, plan, and execute intelligence-based operations, just like Israel does. The best deterrence against precise targeting is always through precise targeting. For instance, if Iran could neutralize a high-value target in Jerusalem after Haniyeh's assassination, that would signal a capability to Israel, forcing it to rethink the utility of assassinations because of reprisals from the adversary. It'll take time, but frankly, there's no avoiding it.